The Philadelphia 76ers hit a slam dunk, landing the third pick in the NBA draft via the NBA draft lottery, but it does not matter the selection they have. It matters what they do with it. There seems to be some momentum building that it may not be Ace Bailey targeted with this third pick, with VJ Edgecombe picking up some steam from multiple reports across NBA reporters there. I do want to dive into exactly what is being said in regards to the Sixers team. My thoughts on the two prospects, who, by the way, to put it up front right here, I like both of them. I like VJ Edgecombe quite a bit. I also like Ace Bailey quite a bit. I think a little too often this turns into this guy versus this guy, this spirited, angry argument. And frankly, I think Ace Bailey has been among the most polarizing prospects I've seen in my lifetime here. That I just want the message to be clear that both guys are capable of being good basketball players. There's going to be more than one good basketball player in this NBA draft. But do want to talk in regards to VJ Edgecombe's overall outlook in connection to the Sixers team, and start off with this report from Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who tweets out, an NBA scout said that he believes Baylor's VJ Edgecombe, a 6'5" guard, and 6'6" Texas guard Trey Johnson could be better than Rutgers forward Ace Bailey. If the Sixers agree, they could slide back a few slots from the number 3 pick in the NBA draft to get additional assets while taking Edgecombe or Johnson. The scout believes after Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, the next 3 or 4 guys are basically the same. If he were Morey, the scout said that he would see if the Charlotte Hornets with the 4th pick or the Utah Jazz with the 5th pick would want to move up. So some interesting thoughts here, and just kind of talk about this as a whole. I'll first share my Trey Johnson, skepticism here. I'm out on Trey Johnson from the Sixers perspective here. Now, this is not purely on his talent here. The guy is a pure bucket getter, but I don't quite see the fit on the Sixers team. There are teams that I would love to see with Trey Johnson. The San Antonio Spurs are at the top of my list when you could have a guy like Victor Wembanyama behind him. But frankly, I don't see a world where this guy can turn himself into even like an NBA average defender. And I do see the case VJ Edgecombe is going to be an above average defender. Ace Bailey has a chance to be an above average defender. And when speaking about the context of the Sixers team, when you have Jared McCain and have Tyrese Maxey as your guards of the future here, this stuff does matter. Now, with that being said, you should not be picking for pick with the 3rd pick. You should be taking the best overall player. I frankly don't think Trey Johnson has a case against either one of these guys, and that's sort of the root of my conversation here. Now, when speaking in regards to this overall premise, it absolutely makes sense if the Sixers do believe that this is somewhat equal with each of these guys, and you want to pick up some assets and move back a little bit. I can see the case being made. You're also playing a dangerous game if you do not get the trade or the package that you desire, and if you don't truly view these guys as equal and do have one above the other, then just take that guy would be my overall message here. Now, Keith Pompey, very plugged in on the Sixers side of things, and particularly from the team aspect there. There's a lot that funnels through Keith that starts from the team source there. I don't know if this was a trial run to go, see how this is perceived here. I think I'm reading into it too much if that is the case, but I do think in general, I find it kind of lame when there are the anonymous quotes. An anonymous scout says VJ Edgecombe is a better prospect than Ace Bailey. Who is that anonymous scout? Say it with your chest, because I do not feel that way there. Now, as far as VJ as a whole, do want to dive into exactly what he brings to a team and from a prospect standpoint. Shout out to Jacob Moreno, who I do the streams with on this channel. Make sure to tap in for those. We're going to be doing a couple more of those as the draft gets closer for sure. And his mini analysis on VJ Edgecombe, which, by the way, he's got a much better deeper dive article that I totally recommend you guys checking out as well. But sort of the bullet points that he says: the positives: an all-around defensive stud, quality off-ball movement, elite athleticism, and a developing playmaker. The cons: he relies only on athleticism on drives. The pull-up shooting is not strong yet, sometimes over aggressive on D, and struggles guarding 3 through 5. I think with directly contrasting Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe, who frankly, even as we get closer and closer to the draft, that to me is who the decision is for that 3rd pick. Sure, you can make case for other guys, the Con Knipples, the Common Malawaks, the Trey Johnsons. There are players that will be thrown into the same mix, but I think from the Sixers perspective, holding that 3rd overall pick, the decision should come down to Ace Bailey versus VJ Edgecombe. And again, I do like both guys, to make that clear. Now, to dive into VJ as a whole, I do want to touch on his stats here. I do think he is more of a Nick Nurse and a Daryl Morey guy for these exact reasons. He impacts the game in a lot of ways. And to list out his stats there, a 15 points per game that he averaged in his lone season at Baylor, 5.6 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 2.1 steals, which is impressive there. 43.6% shooting from the field, 34.0% from 3. I watched a lot of VJ in college. That was a guy who had kind of jumped under my radar coming onto the season, and Baylor became a team that was a pretty frequently watched college basketball team, particularly as the Sixers became tougher and tougher to watch. Don't worry, still got in there, watch those games. Don't you worry about that either. But for VJ specifically, I thought he got better and better as the year went on, and I still think that there's something inside him who hasn't had that full breakout of your shell, I'm this guy yet. I thought he gained confidence as the season progressed, but there weren't as many flashes of like him knowing that he's the best player on the floor, and he was for so many of those stretches here. Now, the point that Jacob makes about the athleticism that I did want to pull up here, I do think is spot on. First off, the athleticism pops off the chart. And I do think from like a movement perspective, I'm not comparing them directly as players because I don't think VJ quite gets to these heights, but just from a movement perspective, he reminds me of Anthony Edwards a ton. The way that he floats, the way that he glides, the way that he can kind of explode and levitate there, it looks very similar. And even from like a shot form, a shot style or a shot release, however you want to phrase it here, it also reminds me of Ant a little bit. Now, with that being said here, I do think to me VJ falls in the category of an athlete who's learning how to play basketball. I'm not saying Ace Bailey is the most polished player on the the planet here, but I do think he's more of a hooper, more of a basketball player, a guy who kind of gets it. Now, in the direct comparison here, I think both the floor is lower and ceiling is higher with Ace. With VJ specifically, you kind of know what you're getting. Now, with a lot of teams and with the Sixers specifically, I think that's going to be appealing. I did want to pull up this quote from Nick Nurse in regard of who the Sixers are targeting with that third overall pick, and he said, "quote I want somebody that competes to win." I want somebody that competes to win, toughness, works, somebody who understands that this is a grind and a job. And you've got a lot of time to get better and a lot of time in the gym and a good teammate. Man, we want somebody who wants to compete, to win, and be part of a great organization. VJ is going to absolutely smash all of the character issues, all of the interview stuff. He is like, when you listen to him speak, such like a soft-spoken, good guy that if you're making a gamble on which of these players is going to absolutely maximize their potential, he's pretty close to the top of the list of all players in this draft. That he does kind of have that about him, that professionalism, that maturity that you don't always get from a lot of these guys coming out of college that like stands out when you watch an interview with him. It's kind of impressive stuff from him. And I do think that is going to be something in addition to his athleticism and all these other factors that will have him continue climbing up boards. Now, this is not just coming from Keith Pompey. This is a lot of different sources and reports that are beginning to connect the dots. It is smokescreen season. I think that is important to put that out there, that there is obviously the Sixers hold the cards with the third pick, that we sort of know the draft starts at them, that it is Cooper Flagg's going to be the 1 pick. Dylan Harper, 99.9% sure, is going to be the 2 pick there, whether it is the San Antonio Spurs making that decision or a team trading up to get it. I do expect him to come off the board with that second. The third is where the canvas of this draft begins to be painted for where all the chips fall here. Now, the other reports that I did want to pull up on, I mentioned the Sam Vinici report in regard to Cam Johnson in a previous video. He also kind of doubled down on the concept of Ace Bailey is not a Sixers target here. And he writes out, Rutgers forward Ace Bailey is reportedly seen as, quote, as more of a project by NBA personnel than Baylor wing VJ Edgecombe, per Sam Vinici of The Athletic. Quote, it's expected that the Sixers will listen to offers at number 3, but it's unclear whom the team would take if it stays, Vinici wrote. Rutgers Bailey has been seen as the biggest upside swing, and he fills the theoretical position of need for Philly as a big wing. But he's also viewed as more of a project by scouts and executives, and this is a Sixers front office that likely needs to win next year to keep its jobs. I've also gotten a wider sense of appreciation from NBA front offices for Edgecombe than Bailey. And to add to this a little further, another guy really plugged into the NBA draft scene, Jonathan Wasserman here. And this article writes, BR's Jonathan Wasserman has Bailey going 3rd overall in his latest mock, with Edgecombe going 4th to the Charlotte Hornets. Here's what Wasserman had to say in part about the two in his description of the Hornets pick. Quote, every team's tier behind Flagg and Harper will include VJ Edgecombe. Front offices that value his 100th percentile explosiveness, shot making, and defensive quickness could slot him at the number 3, particularly if they question Ace Bailey's handle and tunnel vision, Trey Johnson's lack of rim pressure, and Jeremiah Fear's shooting. The draft process should only help illuminate his incredible athletic ability and improving shooting stroke. Ultimately, both Bailey and Edgecombe look like great picks on paper. Bailey might need more work upon arrival, but he's only 18 years old and has plenty of time to develop and reach his sky-high potential. I do think both these guys are going to be good players at the NBA level. The difference to me, if we're picking for fit, and again, that is not the best lens to view this through, but I think when projecting long-term, that Edgecombe is way more into that 2-guard/3 versus Ace Bailey is more of that 3/4, a small forward, power forward type guy, that he's got more size to him. He does have like the lanky limbs that will be able to scale up. I don't see a world where VJ Edgecombe is capable of guarding power forwards or potentially big man for stretches here. The guy who I really think's job is thrown into question if VJ Edgecombe is the guy that the Sixers lock into, that would be Quentin Grimes here. That I see some similarities in their styles of play. Grimes is a guy who sort of had a similar book on him coming out of Houston, a little bit more of a bizarre track record. VJ, I guess, more of a clear blue chip prospect with it, that we saw Grimes had to kind of, make it out the mud a little bit more, that he started his college career at Kansas, had to transfer to Houston, and that's where he really found himself and popped on the NBA maps. There has been a clear pathway for VJ since coming out of college. That I do think if I had to make a bet on the two of them, I do think VJ turns out the better player out of the two, but I'm not making this third overall selection for a guy that's going to be better than Quentin Grimes. If you are making a swing here, who knows when the Sixers are going to be selecting this early in the draft ever again. Ace Bailey is the only guy that I legitimately look at and do see star potential in. And I don't think it happens right away. There's accurate reports, accurate takes that he is more of a project. But the best case, I think, for Ace Bailey is this Sixers situation where he's not asked to be the guy right away. I think the worst thing for him would be to fall to a team like the Charlotte Hornets, where there is more freedom, where he can play next to LaMelo Ball, who pulls up from half court on a regular basis and does whatever he wants within the flow of the offense. If Ace Bailey was to come to Philadelphia here, that there's a very specific defined role from him for day one, that you aren't going to be able to look off Paul George and Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain in the same way that you did with all your Rutgers teammates here. You're going to be asked to defend at a high level. A lot of this is still going to, spiral, and we'll see what happens leading up to the draft. We're going to hear plenty more smoke screens and do when we break all of that down. But I guess my overall point that I would bring to the table here is you got to value this third pick as a potential part of your future. If you do believe that VJ Edgecombe can fit into this long-term vision, I have no problem with it. I just am a little bit skeptical of the entire pieces of the puzzle coming together if that is the case. It's a different conversation for who's straight up the better player and who's straight up the better fit, and you got to kind of weigh what is the priority for the Sixers team. And I also think it's important to note that neither of these guys will make or break this upcoming Sixers season. That none of these guys, and yes, they obviously need them to make a impact to be helpful, but this Sixers season will be decided whether or not Joel Embiid is healthy or himself, whether or not Paul George can return closer to the full version, the max contract player they believe they signed, whether Jared McCain can pick up where he left off in his rookie season, if Tyrese Maxey can be a bit more consistent than the ups and downs that we did see for stretches this season. Those are the factors that will make or break the Sixers year. It is not going to be VJ Edgecombe or Ace Bailey specifically deciding those. So still a lot to unpack there, but did want to hear a little bit of a temperature check from you guys in the comments there. Can you be talked into a VJ Edgecombe discussion there? Is that a guy that you'd be comfortable taking with the 3 pick there? I still have Ace slightly above in my mind, but I'm certainly not anti-VJ. I do think that is a guy that is going to have a long, successful NBA career wherever he may land. We will see ultimately what unfolds and whether or not that is in Philadelphia here. A lot more time to the draft, but the reports, the rumors are starting to heat up, and we're going to be all over it here on Sixers Digest. So once again, make sure you are dropping those comments. Do want to hear from you guys below. As always, appreciate you guys for tuning in this video. If you have not already, make sure you are smashing the subscribe to this channel. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time. Peace.